Have you ever felt the urge to shed your human skin and run wild under the moonlight, taking the form of your spirit animal? Now, whether it be claws, paws, scales, feathers, or even tentacles, there's a subclass in D&D that caters to all of that. And it's a particularly popular one. Let's have a chat about the Moon Druid then, shall we? Hi there, I'm just a second level fighter who likes talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and if you'd rather play D&D as a cute animal than as an actual smelly adventurer, then please consider hitting that subscribe button or leaving a like or comment on the video. But enough about that, because the time has finally come to take a look at one of my most anticipated subclasses. So, the new monster manual recently dropped for us plebs, and I finally got to take a look at the list of new and improved beasts. The reason this is exciting should be pretty obvious, but if it wasn't clear, the Moon Druid is a subclass that focuses almost entirely on using Wildshape for combat power. In other words, this thing is an absolute animal, or at least it has the ability to become one. The Moon Druid, of course, has a very lightly suggested theme of lunar influence, but in truth it's all about the beast forms. If you wanted to play a kind of beast king or queen that expresses complete mastery over the wilds and the animal kingdom, then this one's for you. However, the idea of a trickster-type character that uses their abilities to outwit and outmaneuver their enemies through shapeshifting is also very alluring. Mythological Loki immediately comes to mind, but perhaps we should stay away from horses here. Anyway, I waited this long for this one specifically for the new and improved beast stat blocks, and I'm happy to report for the most part they don't disappoint. So, let's give this thing a fair shake and see what's cracking here. I will of course include my own spin on a level 1 to 20 build at the end of the video, so stick around if you're curious. Starting off at level 3 we get two features, the first of which is circle forms. This one's very straightforward and is what allows us to actually make full combat use of wild shaping. Firstly, the max CR of a beast form we can take when we use wild shape is our level divided by 3 rounded down of course. So CR1 at level 3, CR2 at level 6, 3 at 9, 4 at 12, 5 at 15, and finally CR6 at level 18. This is a stark contrast to every other druid that is stuck with a cap of CR1 which they only get to by level 8. So yeah, we have significantly stronger forms. The second benefit is that our armor class while in beast forms equals 13 plus our wisdom modifier. This is also a major improvement as anything that isn't a dinosaur has really bad AC. Thirdly, the amount of temporary hit points we gain when we use Wild Shape is increased to 3 times our Druid level, which is pretty spicy and further adds to our innate tankiness. Now, all this means is that we get to use some very strong beast forms and there is a really smooth level of progression. We'll go into detail on this a bit later, but the beast forms we do get can kinda keep up with the base level of power of martial classes. I should very briefly touch on the rules and restrictions for wild shaping, because I'm not sure where else to squeeze it in. But as mentioned, we are limited to the CR of certain beasts based on our level. We get full access to their stat block, but we use our own creature type, mental stats, hit points and hit dice, saving throws and skill proficiencies, and we use our own proficiency bonus for those saves and checks. And we also get to keep any class features and feats as well as any languages, and we can of course speak while in beast form, which is rather helpful. However, for everything else, we are limited to the beast's stat block and proficiency bonus, which is going to be either +2 or +3, and that isn't great, particularly when looking at the accuracy of attacks. But very notably, nothing from our species carries over except in very specific examples. So, no dark vision, no cool traits, nothing. We also can't cast spells, but we can keep concentrating on them. Yes, Wild Shape is very specific and restrictive, but it does open up a few very interesting options for building a character, especially when it comes to feat selection and multiclassing, which we will touch on later. Our other third level feature is Circle Spells, and this is actually a bit more interesting than with other druids. So, we are going to get access to the following spells at certain levels, and we will always have them prepared. Most importantly, we can cast these while wild shaped, and that is pretty awesome. So, not going to go into detail on all of them, but Cure Wounds and Mass Cure Wounds essentially mean we can be an ambulance bear if we so desire. Starry Wisp allows every single beast form we have to get access to a ranged attack, which opens up a very strange playstyle later on. Sniper Eagle is definitely a thing. Moonbeam and Conjure Animals are two big constant area of effect spells that deal very decent damage. Conjure Animals is obviously the more thematic option in terms of the Beast Lord theme here, and although it doesn't deal half damage on a save, it does hit pretty hard and is insanely easy to use. I will also just point out that we can self-sabotage with Moonbeam. If we hit ourselves with the beam and fail the save, then we immediately drop our wild shape as we are considered a shapeshifter while using that feature, so be careful with that one. Finally, Fount of Moonlight gives extra damage on hits, sheds light, and has a pretty nasty blinding effect. But as we'll see later, there is a significantly stronger option lying in the Druid spell list. All in all, it's a nice spread of spells to throw out while in our beast forms, particularly Starry Wisp and the healing options. At level 6 we get improved circle forms, and this has two effects that help out our beast forms. While we are wild shaped, we can choose for our attacks to deal their normal damage type or radiant damage. Perfect for overcoming resistances, especially considering we don't have magical weapons or other effects to help with that. Secondly, we can add our wisdom modifier to our constitution saving throws. This means that it is very difficult to break our concentration, particularly while in some of the bigger beast forms, as they have pretty decent constitution scores, and some of them even have proficiency in constitution saving throws. This is just a solid feature that adds to the whole moon beast vibe we have going on. At level 10 we get Moonlight Step, which is yet again another moon-themed feature. This lets us use a bonus action to teleport up to 30 feet, after which we get advantage on our next attack roll made before the end of the turn. We can use this feature a number of times per long rest equal to our wisdom modifier, and if we run out we can choose to spend a spell slot of 2nd level or higher to just use it again. This is pretty awesome as it has the same cost as a Misty Step, but it is a bit better. Notably here, we don't have to be wild-shaped to use this feature. We can do it in our normal squishy humanoid form. Also, this feature pairs very nicely with some of the beast forms that have charge effects bolted onto their attacks, because we can charge and then teleport backwards to the position we started in and go in for a second charge. Finally, for our capstone at 14th level, we get Lunar form, and once again it's a feature with two separate effects. Firstly, we can deal an extra 2d10 radiant damage once per turn when we hit a target with one of our beast form's attacks. This is a nice buff and adds up with the optional Primal Strike portion of the Druid's Elemental Fury feature, and it makes it so we hit really hard with one of our attacks every turn. Secondly, whenever we use our Moonlight Step feature, we can drag a willing creature along with us as long as they are within 10 feet of us before and after we use it. They don't have to end the movement in the same orientation though, which means we can just kinda slingshot them an extra 20 feet if we want. This is really awesome and can be used for some movement shenanigans like relocation, disengaging, or even a surprise engage. All in all, it's a strong capstone that adds onto our already growing power. Alright, now that we've taken a look at the subclass features on offer, what exactly does the Moon Druid do? Well, we don't quite have the full picture just yet as we haven't taken a look at the beast form stat blocks, but from the look of things this subclass actually has rules that support the moon theme now. The 2014 version of this subclass had nothing to do with the moon and would end up wild shaping into elementals for some unknown reason. So yeah, I'm very happy that the moon aspect of the subclass is back in the spotlight. More than that though, this subclass makes wild shaping quite formidable. All of the added survivability and extra utility and damage does help to keep it in line with other martial type characters. And yes, this thing does eventually start playing like a martial character. Obviously, this subclass does allow a player to become a literal beast, but here specifically that is taken to a whole new level as we'll see in a bit. More importantly though, it actually makes the character feel like a beast, whereas other druids feel more like domesticated pets when they use their wild shape feature. Now, it really does deal very respectable damage, and the benefit of having genuinely usable options at almost every level of the game helps this out tremendously. But the combination of Elemental Fury and Lunar form really do some heavy lifting here. However, it isn't all moonlight and cloudless nights, because there are two pretty glaring issues that will show up and I'm going to dump them here. The beast forms we are about to take a look at are all great, but they don't have the highest to hit bonuses. So while the attacks of beast forms hit pretty hard, they aren't very accurate, and this isn't a problem that can be easily solved with magic items like other martial focused characters. On top of that, all of the good beast forms are either large or huge in size, meaning space is a bit of a problem. If a moon druid is stuck in a confined space and a fight breaks out at high levels, well, going back to a medium-sized CR1 or lower form isn't gonna cut it. The loss of accuracy and damage just isn't worth it, but maybe the temporary hit points are. That all being said, I love this iteration of the Moon Druid and I think it is quite powerful, but more importantly, it's very cinematic and extremely versatile. Now for the exciting part, let's take a look at the progression of Wildshape forms available in the new Monster Manual. Now, this is a significant improvement over what was available before. Yes, some might be slightly worse in certain areas, but the smoothness in progression here is very much appreciated. I obviously can't go over every single stat block here, so I've pointed out most of the good combat forms. But yeah, from about CR3 onward, I am just gonna list every single one because there aren't that many. I have also color-coded them. Anything in yellow is best in class, and yes, one CR is missing this, and that is intentional. Anything that is green has a climb speed, and anything in blue has a swim speed. The single asterisk or star show which forms have dark vision, and the double asterisk or star show which forms have blind sight. Finally, the size of each form is shown in brackets or parentheses, whatever you want to call it. Now, for CR1, the lion is the king of the savannah and not the jungle. They don't often show up in jungles, and when they do, trust me, they are not the king in that situation. But yeah, they have great accuracy at this level, as well as multi-attack and pack tactics. This thing is a bit of a monster. The giant spider and giant octopus are great options when their respective environments are relevant, but because they lack multi-attack, they can't really compete with the lion. Now, CR2 is really exciting in my opinion because there are multiple great options that rival the best depending on what is needed. But the dominant animal for general use here in my opinion is obviously the polar bear. It has a +7 to hit, which is the highest we're going to see for a very long time. It also has a swim speed, making it the best water option too. However, the Allosaurus, rhinoceros, and saber-toothed tiger are all very respectable alternatives, each with their own quirks. The Allosaurus is hideously fast and actually deals the most damage in the right situations at this CR, but it is less accurate than other options. The Rhinoceros has one big scary attack that outdamages the polar bear if a charge is made, but this is a bit of a gamble. And the saber-toothed tiger does outdamage the polar bear without any specific situations or scenarios, but it is less accurate. It does also have the ability to disengage or hide as a bonus action, which is pretty nice. The giant constrictor snake is a nice alternative, but it does rely on a saving throw which is a lot less reliable than attacks, but it is also the first huge form available to us. Now, CR3 is the letdown category for me. Yes, the options here could technically be better in certain regards, but none of them are as accurate as the polar bear, and at this stage of the game that does start to become a bit of an issue. Technically, the giant scorpion is the best as it has 3 attacks with some awesome damage potential, but it only has a +5 to hit, so no thank you, I refuse to make it yellow. But things get exciting again at CR4. The elephant is a stupid jump in power and accuracy, going up to a +8, which feels amazing. This is also the point at which the beast forms start showing that they really don't hit softly. The Archelon just so happens to have the fastest swim speed of all our beast forms except for one, with a massive 80 feet. However, the hippopotamus is the better combat form for water environments, even though it is much slower. CR5 is my personal favorite category here. The Triceratops is the best with 2 massive attacks that deal extra damage if it charges 20 feet before attacking. Using Moonlight Step, we can basically guarantee this. The outcome here is so good that it makes the Triceratops a genuine contender for the best beast form of all. Cause yeah, it deals slightly less damage than the apex creature, but it doesn't have as many points of failure, although it does have one less to hit. However, the giant crocodile is a decent alternative, but it has less accuracy and a grapple that makes a creature untargetable by the attack they make with their tail. The giant shark, though, is amazing. It isn't quite as good as the others, but it is probably the best water form we have, as it can give itself advantage on attacks against targets that are missing any hit points. It's also just hilarious to think about using it on land in close quarters despite its 5-foot speed. Finally, at CR6 we have the mammoth and the giant squid. Yes, mathematically speaking, the mammoth is most likely the best form for damage dealing. They have a trample bonus action like the elephant, and their 2 attacks are mighty, but relying on a dex save sounds a bit dodgy to me. It also has a +10 to hit, which is as high as it gets for us. Personally, I prefer the Triceratops even though it has worse ability scores. The giant squid though is also an interesting option because it's as fast as the Archelon and it can grapple, but I think the giant shark is more reliable and ends up dealing more damage overall thanks to its advantage. With all of that being said, this is a vast improvement over the previous Monster Manual's offering. There is something to be excited about at every level of the game, and genuinely a lot of the options themselves are close enough in damage potential that most of them are viable at their particular level range. Personally, I'm a dinosaur boy, so give me the Allosaurus and Triceratops. I'll also take the giant shark and call it a Megalodon. Now, Wildshape isn't just a combat ability. Yes, Moon Druids get a significant portion of their damage potential here, but it's also used for exploration, infiltration, and other aspects of the game. So, here's a list of special beast forms that are useful in other ways or for other reasons. Starting off with the CR1 half Black Bear, this thing is an absolute unit. It only has a +4 to hit, so definitely not the greatest in combat, but I do believe it could probably hold its own in tier 1. However, it has a climb speed and a swim speed, so it goes wherever it pleases. It is also medium-sized, and this is genuinely helpful. The giant venomous snake is a strangely decent combat form for a CR1 quarter creature. It has a +6 to hit with a single attack that also deals poison damage, but it's a good infiltrator with high dex and a swim speed. Also, once again, the medium size helps. The giant lizard has the fastest climb speed of all beast forms. It also has the spider climb trait, so it can just kinda hang out on the ceiling if it wants to. It isn't as good as the giant spider, but it is definitely faster. Then the regular spider is probably the best infiltration option with a climb speed. These things are everywhere, and nobody is going to give it a second thought if they see one in a dungeon or cave. When it comes to flying options though, we only unlock these at level 8, and none of them have anything remotely impressive to offer in terms of attacks, but they can be used in other ways in combat with spells. The Sniper Eagle isn't as much of a meme as it sounds. However, the Owl and Giant Bat are the two best options here. The Owl has flyby, so it doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. And the Giant Bat is large and has 120 feet of blind sight. The large size here is helpful for projecting emanations like conjure woodland beings. Sadly, other big options like the Giant Owl, Giant Eagle, and Giant Vulture are no longer considered beasts, so we can't use them. The Giant Elk is also sadly thrown into that category. Finally, I'll mention it because it's kinda funny, the ape is the best beast form for us to use that has hands. So feasibly, it could use weapons. Maybe a club imbued with shillelagh. I don't know why anyone would want to do that. We would kinda need to use the beast's proficiency bonus, so accuracy would still be an issue. However, the ape is the only beast form with a built-in ranged attack, and it's not that bad. It can throw rocks, and those rocks hit about as hard as a greatsword. So yeah, if you want to roleplay like you're in Planet of the Apes, then this option is definitely there. Alright, how do we build a Moon Druid? Well, it is a spellcaster at heart, and Wildshape means that boosting any of our physical ability scores is kinda useless, except for maybe Constitution, because that gives us more hit points. So, pump up Wisdom, and then maybe Constitution. There are two important choices we need to make with our core Druid features. At level 1 we get Primal Order, and here I would suggest the Magician option, as we would gain very little from proficiency with martial weapons and training in medium armor. The boost to nature and arcana checks isn't terribly consequential, but it makes sense that a character obsessed with animals would know a lot about nature. The other big choice is at level 7 where we get Elemental Fury. Here we can choose potent spellcasting to add our wisdom modifier to our druid cantrip damage, or we can take Primal Strike to deal an extra 1d8 elemental damage once per turn. Both of these options improve later on. The choice may seem obvious, and yes, Primal Strike should be the default here, but going for a Starry Wisp flying sniper build is kinda funny too. Later on with this concept, we can cast Thorn Whip in Wildshape form and can yoink enemies off cliffs or into the air, but generally more melee damage is better. With that all being said, a Moon Druid doesn't look terribly different from any other spellcasting build. Our attacks aren't terribly accurate, but we can make up for this with spells. Using a big concentration option that isn't one of our circle spells before entering Wildshape is the general playstyle, and there are some very devastating options. Here's a very brief list of Druid spells that are incredibly well suited to how the Moon Druid operates. Summon Beast and Summon Fae are awesome little spells. Summon Beast obviously fits the theme here a bit better, but Summon Fae could give us a little rider to accompany us. Both of these options give a temporary pet that deals very respectable damage and doesn't eat our action economy. Personally, I prefer them both over Summon Elemental. Then Conjure Minor Elementals doesn't feel as filthy on a Moon Druid as it does on other specific builds that exploit it. The Moon Druid is hard limited to 2 attacks and has poor accuracy, so it feels more or less balanced. That being said, the spell shoots their damage to the moon, but it isn't so hideously far ahead of the other great concentration options. Conjure Woodland Beings is an immensely strong area of effect spell that benefits from the fact that many of the beast forms are large or huge. This means that it covers a wider area because the starting point is just bigger. However, wild shaping into a flying creature and flying straight into the faces of our enemies is a viable strategy too. Animal Shapes is pure flavor and will let us transform our party into a pack of wild animals. And we can then of course become the leader or alpha. And finally, Shape Change lets us become any creature we've seen that has a CR equal to or less than our level. The new animal lords from the Monster Manual are CR20 creatures that just so happen to be demigods with an overt theme based on animals. This is a subclass based on turning into animals. Yeah, do the math and become one of these at level 20 and complete the journey. Enough said. Finally, let's take a look at feats and species. Now, interestingly enough, all feats remain active while in Wildshape, so this changes our list of options quite drastically, and there are things here that no other spellcaster would ever consider. Observant and Keen Mind are quite nice when it comes to actually being useful. Taking the search or study actions as a bonus action in combat when the time calls for it is just amazing. These can also be used to boost our wisdom. Telekinetic gives another bonus action option in a small 5-foot push or pull. It's pretty great. Then there really isn't much other than Charger that will give more damage while in a beast form. However, most of the good forms have a charge rider on their attacks, so why not? Speedy increases speed in wild shape form too, and gives disadvantage on opportunity attacks. It's just pretty solid. Finally, Athlete is a bit of a weird one. This gives a climb speed equal to our regular speed. And, surprise surprise, this applies to all beast forms too. So yeah, nobody is safe from the climbing Triceratops, or God forbid the giant land shark with a 5-foot climb speed. Now, things are a bit weirder when it comes to species. Unless something gives extra hit points, skill proficiencies, or an extra feat, it is entirely meaningless while we are wild-shaped. So, obviously this leaves the dwarf and human to be the 2 best options in my opinion, because their bonuses actually help while in a beast form. But I will also mention that the custom lineage from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything works for the exact same reason as the human. There are some very weird things we can do with Eldritch and Metamagic Adept, taken through the extra feat here. But that is a very niche application. Now, when it comes to multiclassing with the Moon Druid, there are a lot of very interesting things that we can do. However, taking any levels in another class does slow down our Wildshape progression, so keep that in mind. On top of that, beasts don't have weapons, and their attacks aren't considered weapons or even unarmed strikes. They are just attacks. This might not sound like the biggest deal, but it does severely limit the effectiveness of certain multiclasses, as we'll see. Anyway, a barbarian is when barbarian is thrown into the mix. Now, this is a classic and for good reason. Adding rage to a wild animal just kinda makes sense. However, the rules here seem to disagree. Yes, we gain the defensive benefits of rage, but we don't add our rage damage bonus here to any of our attacks because that requires a weapon or unarmed strike to do. Also, it prevents us from concentrating, and that is a big portion of our power. It is still very thematic though, and we do get to benefit from reckless attack, which is pretty awesome for our pitiful accuracy. The Art of Bare Fu is when monk levels are taken. This lets us make unarmed strikes as a bonus action, and that is very cool. Beasts can do this, however just remember that they need to use their own proficiency bonus and ability scores, so oftentimes not too great. But this does open up a few other options. Obviously, when Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind are unlocked, things do get a bit spicy. I'm calling the fighter multiclass a green beret. Action Surge is amazing while in beast form, especially when combined with a spell like Conjure Minor Elementals or Fount of Moonlight. But Second Wind is also just awesome to have. Now, there are 2 fighting styles that also give a benefit here. Blind fighting gives blind sight, which is nice, but unarmed fighting deals a tiny amount of unavoidable damage to a creature we are grappling, and a few of the beast forms do that. Also, we could make unarmed strikes, I guess. The Brother Bear is the idea of taking 3 levels of Ranger and unlocking the Beastmaster subclass. The Primal Companion scales off of our Wisdom and can be commanded as a bonus action, or by sacrificing our attack when taking the attack action, and the rules suggest that that is what we do whenever we use our attacks in our Beast form stat block, so yeah, it's pretty good. It's also charming to have a smaller version of whatever we choose to wildshape into accompanying us into battle. Everything else from the Ranger is almost entirely useless though, because we don't have weapons, so don't pick one of the other subclasses. Finally, let's round things off with the Barely Legal. Taking 3 levels of Bladesinger Wizard gives us Blade Song, and this is basically a stacking armor class buff, and yes, it does work while we are in beast form. Why not add our intelligence and wisdom modifiers to 13 and see how high we can push our AC? Also, this thing never fails concentration checks. Of course, the path to becoming a super tank just so happens to be the wizard. Alright, the time has come to build us one of these fuzzy wuzzies. We'll be going human for the extra origin feat and we'll call our little character Gleemo, for reasons. He was obviously raised by wolves and he likes living in jungles. Oh, and there's a book about him or something, maybe a movie or two. But yeah, Gleemo will start out with 15 wisdom, 14 constitution, and 13 dexterity using the standard array. The other ability scores really don't matter though. Gleemo had a unique but highly trademarked background, which is of course custom, so he'll get a +2 to wisdom and a +1 to dexterity, as well as the alert origin feat. The other one he'll pick up with his species is tough. Now, skills aren't too important here, but maybe a spread like perception, insight, animal handling, and nature would work thematically. Gleemo is a bit of a trickster, and less so a savage beast lord, so he'll be using his shapeshifting powers to outwit and outmaneuver his enemies. He'll also throw in some druidic magic for good measure. Along his path to level 20, Gleemo will pick up a few feats, and here I really wish druids got a few more cause there are some awesome things moon druids can do, but they kinda need to have high wisdom as well. At level 4, we'll pick up Observant for some juicy perception expertise and searchy bonus actions. We'll cap out Gleemo's wisdom at level 8 nice and early with an ability score increase. Level 12 is where we get a bit weird, cause we'll put a point in dexterity while taking the speedy feat for more speed. And yes, here we are preparing for the 60-foot speed Triceratops. At level 16, we'll round up that dex to 16 with the Charger feat. I could have taken this earlier, but yeah, this is a very difficult subclass to make choices on, so this is just how things panned out. Also, why am I pumping dexterity and not constitution? Well, having good initiative is just helpful, and moon druids don't really need the boost to concentration checks through something like resilient. Also, it's best to roll initiative while in our human form, because we do want to wait and see what beast form is going to be the best in a specific situation. Anyway, we'll round things out with the boon of combat prowess. I really wanted to take something else here, but making a single attack auto hit every turn is just too good on a subclass with bad accuracy. Guaranteeing our elemental fury and lunar form damage is really nice. So yeah, that's the build. Gleemo is a bit of an animal. Oh, and the jungle he hails from absolutely has dinosaurs. That part is very important. Alright, that was the Moon Druid at last. I've been so excited for this one cause it is way better than the old version. But how do you feel about it? Has the new monster manual done this subclass justice? Anyways, if you've made it this far into the video, then you're a legend and I really do appreciate you. Do we need more beast forms for druids to wildshape into? And what is your favorite Moon Druid multiclass? Obviously, it has to have a cool name that references a bear in some way. But yeah, that'll do it for this one. Cheers.